Do you have any questions before we?
I just have one, again, silly little one, but when you talk about tendinosis, is that generally related to the peroneal?
Peroneal.
Um,
It can be, yeah, I think I did talk about it mostly in relationship to the Peroneal Longus, but you can have a tendinosis of any tendon. So that I do see it in the Achilles tendon. You can see it, you would actually physically, visibly see the tendinosis usually in the Achilles tendon. Because instead of when you look at the tendon, instead of seeing a nice straight line down, you usually see a little kind of a bump on the tendon, or if you run your fingers on it, it feels like it's a bumpy, not smooth, straight line anymore. So you can also have a tendinosis. Really, it just means that the structure of the tendon has started to change. And so the fibers are bunching up or curving a little bit. They're just not laying straight. So that's what differentiates it from a tendonitis, which is really more just the inflammation of the tendon. The tendinosis is actually the structural changes happening to the tendon, and that can result from a tendonitis. Usually it's more of a chronic injury when it becomes a tendinosis. Usually what we're after when you see a tendinosis, we're usually after a lengthening. We're trying to re-lengthen those fibers. So the best kind of contraction muscular work for it is that eccentric or the lengthening contraction. So the idea is to get the bunching away and put stress on the tendon as it's elongating and strengthen it in that elongated position with the intention of then working through the range of motion. But the concentric rate bunches up the muscles and can bunch up the eccentric, or the lengthening or stretch on that tendon can really help the fibers find their way into a better position and healing in that direction. So usually we're working on elongation. For if it's in the Achilles, for example, it's the lowering down part. Working in the lowering down part rather than the actual, like a calf raise. It would be the lowering down work that we want to stretch and strengthen in that eccentric or lengthening mode. So yeah.
And so what about the peroneal longus? Same kind of.
Peroneal longus, right? So that really works in E version. So peroneal longus is going to be down here and then under my foot there. So the two ways that I can really elongate it would be that would be the concentric contraction would be my foot going into E version. The eccentric would be returning it back to neutral or even beyond with work, like working against resistance the whole time, not just letting it go there with the band, for example. So if I had the band here, I could pull it open and really slowly return it back to where I came from. And that's going to lengthen it along its path. All right, so there's a few things. I'll just start with that metronome. I just wanted to review it because I do think it is helpful for the feet. So, and since I didn't do a very good job because I was afraid to lose the bar, I brought Tiziano here to help me out. So what I was trying to demonstrate is that, and why it's good for the feet is because I can really work my feet over the bar. So I can work them into a pointed position, stretch them out there, and then I can roll my body back. So I'm really working hard with my feet and the flexors in the bottom of my feet to hold that bar. Then I can press it up. And this part, I think I was able to demonstrate, but coming up here, right, I can hold this, take one foot off. I have the two options. One is straight leg, point, flex, and back to the bar. Right, obviously changing point, flex, back to the bar. And then I'm gonna roll back down, pull the bar through, hold it with my feet, straighten out the legs. And then I can roll back up, right, come back to the bar, grab it with my hands, and then reverse my way back up through here, bringing the legs down. So that would be what we call the straight leg version. The bent leg version, a little more challenging, actually, even. I start again with the feet on, but this time with a little bend in the knees. So I'm, again, really working through those feet. I'm gonna roll my way down. I'm gonna take my legs up, body up. I release one foot, and then here I'm gonna bend and take it back up, and bend and take it back up, right? And then I can do the same on the other side. Bend and bring it up, and bend and bring it up, both feet back on. I roll back down, work through my feet. I keep that bent leg, and then I have to try and roll up from here. Again, re-grab the bar, reverse my motion, pressing the legs up here, and then I can take my legs down. So just a lot of kind of that grippy work we were doing with the feet, with the over the balls and stuff, just kind of in real life action. So I just don't recommend doing it without someone to support the bar. I've seen the bar go flying through the risers a few times. So, and especially I tightened this so that it's not sliding around. That doesn't help either. So that was the metronome that I was trying to show you that I didn't do a very good job last time. Okay, so that was missing. And then we have the jump series on the reformers. We went over this a little bit when we talked about the ankle. For the foot, it's not that much difference, just a little more focus on actually using those feet and working on those the musculature in the feet. So my favorite version of the jumping is really the one where we're doing those mini jumps. So what I did here spring wise is I put on 2 heavy springs. You could also adjust it down a little bit. 2 heavy springs can get to be quite a load for these, the feet, if the feet aren't strong already, so they can really fatigue quickly. And the setup is basically just starting out. I like to start people on straight legs, and the alignment, we talked a little bit about positioning. If the feet can stay up a little bit higher, it's a little easier on the core and holding that neutral spine position. If the feet go down, I have to work a lot harder in my center. However, alignment wise, it becomes a little easier, especially with the mini jumps, to actually figure out where to place those feet if they're kind of under my legs. So you could definitely play with that positioning just based on what your client, what you feel like your client needs more of support wise. And then here, when I do these ones, to really get the feet to fire, I teach them to bend and only go in as far as they can go with their heels down still. So my heels are staying contact with my footboard. And then I'm gonna push out, lift up on the toes. So basically our combo footwork, out and up, heels down and bend. And once I get this rhythm going, I can add the little press away, and I don't even have to lift up at first. And then I can start to push off the board with pointed feet. So I'm really working to point and then land toes, and I'm only coming in a tiny bit. And so this in slow motion, people start to get it here. But then when we try to put it together, what I see a lot of is people they end up doing this kind of thing. This is really flat foot. I'm not doing much of anything, right? I really want to get this extension and that landing. Extension, land. And I want to slow the landing down before my heels have to come off. If I continue bending, my heels are going to come off because there's no room, right? But if I stay out here, they don't have to, right? I can stop. So I'm going to connect these here. Really mini jumps. If people still don't get it, because we're here, right? I'm really trying to articulate those feet. I have them I tell them to jump with their knees straight. They all go, what? How can I jump with straight knees? But it's really interesting to see. Then they start to figure out, oh, I have to push through my feet, right? Now I'm not even bending, which I don't really recommend as a way to jump, but it's a really nice way to try and activate the feet. So I call them, little bunny hops or presses to get those feet really going. And then we can add a little more knee bend, which is much better here. And then again, I can switch positioning, turned out. I can go into kind of a loose 4th or 5th position, right? I can go into a turned out position, a wider position. I can go on single foot. And what's interesting is a lot of times their form is better when they're on one foot. So if you notice they're having a really hard time getting both feet to do what they need to do, try one foot at a time. And then you could try having them alternate and really think about what they're doing for that footwork. It's so any combination of any movement. And what I would say is, if you have a runner, it's different than it is for a dancer, right? Because a runner needs to work in parallel. They need to be able to take off, jump, run, sprint in parallel. So you want to be thinking, not that we can use the whole gamut, but my main focus isn't going to be getting them to do it well in turnout. I'm going to really work on getting them to do it better in parallel. I can use turnout for sure to strengthen the hip rotators, to find maybe a connection in the inner thighs if they're not getting that. So it's all useful, but my focus would be, what does their form look like in parallel? So how can I mimic how they would look running? Yeah. And so I would keep that in mind. And then from those mini jumps, I'm just going to fix one thing that's making noise here. But from those mini jumps, I can move into those bigger jumps. And the bigger jumps are definitely useful. They're super useful, but then I don't want to lose the work of the feet. And that's what I find a lot of times people end up in their quads, right? And when we start going to bigger jumps, but if you start them in this mini jump series, then you can move them to a bigger jump and still use their feet. So the bigger jumps being allowing them to just get more explosive. I'm just going to I can get more explosive, but if you notice, I'm still pointing and coming down to my toes first. Point and land, point and land. So now I have a really nice combination, and I usually really focus on the landing piece. So the landing should be soft. They'll jump and land, jump and land. So I don't know how your setup is, but in our other studio, it's all the wood floor. And so if people there's two ways people jump, and gymnasts are particularly bad at jumping. They end up, when they land, pushing. And if they're pushing away, what happens is the reformer starts to slide across the floor down that way. So I don't know if you've ever seen that happening. Yes. That's because instead of lifting off and holding my weight up here, I'm coming in and pushing down to get myself to go up. I hope that makes sense. It's totally a different action. So the idea here is that I'm lifting up through my body, through my center, to carry my weight. I'm going to imagine that I'm just going to stay there as long as I can and super softly come down on the board. And what I've done sometimes, which I don't know if I should recommend it or not, but I will stand at the foot plate and put my hands down and tell them to land on top of my hands. And once I do that, they hold their muscles tight and they all of a sudden come down really softly because they're so afraid to hurt me, right? But that gives them that idea of pulling up and away, not landing heavy and pushing off the footboard. So if you're brave, you might just set your hands and I'll just stand there and say, okay, come on, land on my hands. And they'll be like, what? And they'll pull their belly up and they'll try and stay out there. Yeah, and that feeling comes if you really unlighten the springs. So I go all sorts of various weights on the springs when I do the jumping for different motives, right? If I want to really work muscularly, I put a little more weight on in the legs. If I want to work more abs, I'll take a lot of weight off to give them hang time, what I like to call hang time. So here, if I take and go to my light spring, just one light spring, I end up with all this hang time to think about what I'm doing. So it's a great way to teach them what to do in that hang time. Is a great way to teach them what to do in their center. So now it's super light and I just float here. So I can really concentrate on pressing out, connecting, and coming in nice and slow. Pressing out, super light landing, right? Pressing out. I'm working hard in my center now to hold that posture, but I have all kinds of time to think about what I'm supposed to do with my feet. Yeah, so you're welcome to sort of change that, and I can do all kinds of different motions, right? You could mimic a running pattern or whatever you think they might need to help them really figure out where they are in space. So sometimes unloading, even for that organization of the body and giving them time to think about it and then putting springs back on can be super helpful as well.
Just a quick, so light spring, do you have colors on your springs or no?
Yes, I do. What
Is that a blue
balance body would be a blue spring. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
A blue spring. On this is Elena. I'm on a green spring, which is for balance bodies that's super heavy.
Okay,
spring.
yeah, and right, exactly. And then when you said two heavy springs, so
Too red, probably.
red, okay, all right, not a green.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Or you could go to a green. I think two red's enough, because then otherwise they end up coming in so hard.
Yeah.
And heavy. Yeah, a lot of times two red. If it's a small person, I'll do a red and a blue, just to give them a little less pressure as they work through. And then we did up to the balancing on the bar, right? We did the standing leg lowers on the chair, and then we were working on balancing on the bar. We talked about finding the position, putting the bar all the way down, and then finding this position on the bar, working on just the balance and stability here, and then working on calf raising up and down. If they get good at it, finding themselves on one foot and calf raising on just the one, holding the balance here. And then we did the same in tandem stance, or what I call tandem stance. So it's working on, talked about how the bar is a different shape, right? So kind of that round shape. So having to balance on here really recruits some of the muscles on the side, like around the big toe and the pinky, you have to spread out a little bit. And that you can also work on the single leg here. You could also move to on releve here, right? And you could also work in releve on that single foot, which obviously I should work on some more. Right, there we go. So those were the balancing ones. They're just lovely exercises to do. Challenging, and they're great for your already athlete people because, well, they're great for everybody because the older people can do it really quite successfully. They feel safe because they have the handles to hold on to too. But athletes are surprisingly not very good at it, I find. So it's a great place if you're trying to show somebody that they need help or that where they're lacking, especially after an injury. Getting them to stand there and find their balance is a big deal. Most people can't do it very well. So it's a great place to be and a great place to measure progress because as they get better and stronger, this gets easier and easier. So it's just one of those nice markers, kind of like the foam roller I find is a really good marker for postural strength. Okay, so then we also had the U-pull, or it's called U-pull or upstretch usually, where this, I'm going to put a heavy spring at, actually two heavy springs at the top. So in balance body, it's usually two black springs at the top or one black or one down from the top. Usually I like the bar to come all the way up to the top for these because then I get that full complete motion. I'm going to go ahead and stand on the bar and then wrap my heels together. My hands, I've seen it done a couple different ways. Hands at the top edges here and hands at the sides here. I tend to go, for this one, I tend to go just fingers over the top edge. What I'm doing with my feet, I'm gonna find a little bit of a releve and I'm gonna try and keep it there on this one. And I'm gonna press through my arms and bring myself up to my tippy toes, down without placing the weight down. The weight's on the upper body and lifting back up, pulling those heels up and down, right? So just working on holding that posture through the feet as I do this one. The one I actually find a little more challenging are the oblique ones here. So the alignment is just along the bar with the feet. I usually go one hand here and one hand here. Again, I've seen variations on this. I like this setup because I can use my arms to help my hips stay in place. If I have to go way over here, I find that I want to fall in. So I try and stay over my feet here. I'm going to come up, but I'm going to leave my feet flat, almost lifting the toes here and coming down. Make feet flat and down. So just adding awareness to these exercises about what my feet can and should be doing. Remember, every time we lift up those toes, we get a little bit of an arch forming underneath the foot. So it's just a really nice exercise for that, to have that awareness while you're working the rest of your body here. So those could be nice things to use as well, and just draw awareness down to the feet while you're doing them. All right. So progressing from here, I'm going to take one of my springs off and leave the bar at the very top. Okay. So we're moving into what I know as the warrior series here. So here I set myself up, and this one is a great exercise because it connects my foot to my glute medius and my hip alignment a lot. So that's why I really like this one. Let me just give myself a little more space. I'll show you what I mean here. As I go, I think I'll do both feet so you can see from both sides. But I'm going to stand a little bit away from my chair on my left foot here, take my right foot back in a straight line. So I'm going to set up this foot so it's really arch lifted, but the ball, all four corners of that foot are down. And I'm going to really have to pick up this stance hip. If I sink in that hip, my whole foot, knee, everything collapses. So I'm going to really stay up in that hip, in that foot. I like to feel like I'm pulling on this bar, so almost that I'm pulling towards me, lengthening my head and neck, and I can press down without moving my body with my arms, hold up with the foot, and then I can do both together, up, up, really try and hold that body steady, keep that alignment over my foot and leg, and then I relax it down, right? And then if you see it from the other side just for a moment, I'm going to set up the same way. I'm really working to lift through this glute, trying to keep my pelvis as square as I possibly can. I'm going to pulse the arms down here, almost again pulling a little towards me, arms pulsing. Usually do 8. I usually do about 8 with the leg, and then I do them together. And then I can come down. So I feel a lot of work from the floor all the way up into my butt and hip on that one. And then there's sorry, go ahead, question.
The spring? I'm sorry, I missed the spring.
It's one black spring all the way at the top.
Okay.
So I like them again all the way at the top just to pull the bar all the way up there. So I usually do one black or one heavy spring all the way at the top. And then variation wise, we have all kinds of variations, right? I can go into that straight leg version. I can come into a bent and extended version, right? Just to create more challenge here. That's a hollow and open. I can also do this coming up on the toe and then reaching out and lifting up and in. So I can really challenge that. And I can also go into side star. Side star, like I find on the mat, even everywhere you do a side star, it's super hip rotators and glute activator. So getting in the position and getting this hip underneath me and not out this way, so it's not stomach down, it's really pelvis rotated. So I'm opening my pelvis to the front and holding that is a lot of work already on that glute, sets up my foot for me. And then I can go from here, pulsing down. I can pulse up and I can do both. Right, and just by doing one set, you can already start to feel all this work in your glutes. So if you suspect that somebody is having trouble in their foot because they don't have good strength in their glute medius, or they can't align well over their hip, these are really excellent ways to sort of isolate that area. They may even be too challenging at first. You could do like a toned down version on the mat, for example, even trying to do it kneeling, or you could do it even kneeling here. at first, so I could kneel and try and push the bar down to the floor, and just even try and hold this position without letting my butt go out the back. That's already a lot of work here, getting that alignment and that hip underneath me. So if you think that the foot problem is coming from the hip, you might consider these exercises to really help find that lift, to get that hip glute area activated. Because if that sinks, if my hip goes out and sinks, my foot flattens, my knee hyperextends, I've just lost all of that nice spiral and lift and positioning in my foot. Yeah, you could do any of those really. I like we called it the FTD florist, but it's the bent and straight one. This one's just really nice to add the releve to this one. You can flatten and lift, or you can hold it in releve as you go, right? Just really great strengthening exercises. And then we did go over some of these ones before. I'll just review them quickly. They were the lunge series from, we looked at them at the ankle as well. So lunge series as an obviously good choice spring-wise. For somebody who's not that strong and kind of medium-sized or tall-sized or larger size, you would put 2 block springs at the top, probably. Somebody who's smaller or stronger, you could start lowering those springs. So 2 blocks, 1 down from the bottom, or 2 heavy springs. Again, I like the bar coming all the way up, so I try not to go too low with the bar, because I like that work of finishing the motion upward. So here I am gonna go up at the top here. So I keep my bar right up there. I set myself up at the top when I get to the top. And I know that's not what everybody does, but I like to get up there and set myself all up. So I'm just gonna get up there, set my foot with the toes slightly over the edge, and get up here, organize myself from the top. So I'm gonna take my foot as far forward as I can on the chair, just to give me as much room for my knee to bend and stay not crossing my toes too far in front. Yeah. This back foot, I like to keep it right up on the heel. And then I'm going to work to go, right up on the toe with the heel up. That's what I meant. And go down and then lifting upward. So ideally I start with my holding on so I can keep my body in good alignment. I'm working through this standing leg. I'm pointing through that back leg and I'm coming up with it, right? And then down. A lot of the mistake I feel like is a mistake here. People really load those springs and then they hang out back here and they're going up and down here, but now I'm not really working. It really is an exercise of work in the front leg, not in the back leg. So if somebody's way back here and just going like this, I'm not really getting much out of it, I don't think. But for you to evaluate, just pay attention to where their body is. I feel like the work should be on this front leg here. So I'm going to have my body slightly forward that whole time. I go down as far as I can, really digging in that heel and sticking out my butt, keeping control over that foot ankle and working my way back up, right? And then I can do all kinds of variations here as well. There's so many of them, but here I can find this position and just hold. So just to have this static here, I'm still working that back leg and foot, obviously, for that position, right? And come up. So and then before I get down, we have these sideways as well, right? So turned out, I try and get to the front corner of the chair here with this foot, trying to keep that arch lifted. I take this leg a little behind. My goal is to try and keep the pelvis square forward, going down and squeezing my way up here, going down and squeezing my way up, right? Going down and squeeze, and I can hold, and then bend and straighten as well and work my way up. So really nice exercises. They're really very safe, which is nice because I can place the foot and ankle there. If I'm worried about somebody's foot and ankle not being that strong, I could actually put my hands from that side on their foot and ankle and help them hold the alignment that I want. Keep really close eye on that stance leg while they go up and down. And they're really quite safe there. They're not going to twist or roll. There's not a lot of action, but it's a great strengthening work for them. So that's why this is such a wonderful series as well. Okay, so we're on to the very last. I'll move this out of the way. I know not everybody has this arc. You can do a lot of these exercises with the Clara barrel as well. If you have that wooden one, you could, not all of them, but these will give you an idea of what you can do. You can use other items to also achieve the same results, but it'll just give you some fun ideas. The ladder barrel, I don't really do much for the foot and ankle, I must say, on the ladder barrel, unless I'm doing kind of ballet bar type work, but that goes a little bit beyond sort of the scope. But you could obviously use the ladder as a bar, having them work going up and down, calf raises and things like that that are really simple. But I think you guys probably can figure out and know for yourself. But this is just some fun things on this one. And because this comes off, I like to use it as a place to stretch the calves, so I can place it down. Oops, let me make sure you can see it, sorry. There you go. And I can just stand on it, on the top of it, and work my way down to stretch out the calves here. So just a really nice calf stretch place. You can do this on a wedge. The wedges in this work a little nicer, in my opinion, than just the stair, because I have some support in the back and the front. So that would be the value. I've had some clients who use a slant board, or even have one of my clients even had it at her office. So she would just get on the phone and stand on her slant board to work out. She had Achilles tendinosis for kind of chronic problem. And so that's what she would do when she was on the phone, stand on her slant board. You can do calf raises here. You can do kind of prancing here as well, just working on that elongating and sinking and really feeling like you're in control the whole time. So this is just a nice tool for that. So this or a slant board could be super useful for those things. And then we have a couple of fun exercises that you can do standing upside down on the arc. So, and the arcs are not balanced entirely. One side, right, is more round than the other. So I always recommend doing both sides. But here you can put your toe in the arc there and here, and we can work on kind of this rocking side to side. So having to do a little lateral shifting. So working a lot on that control through the foot and ankle in that shifting motion, working on balance and stability. So these are really nice. And obviously, as you can see, I definitely have to do both sides because my arc is not level, but it's the same thing. Yeah, so just coming on, pressing on here, so I can really work this motion. I can try and do it just keeping the body straight, pretty straight with my legs, or I can work it into a low squat, right? And really work down and up here, do that squat. I could also do it going front to back. So I can step on it here, step on it in front, and then I can work front to back. And this is nice because I get a good Achilles stretch in the back here. And then I can come up in front and work my way down. So your lunging athletes, your athletes that are doing running, lunging athletes, could be really useful to kind of recreate that motion and recreate the stretch at the bottom of the Achilles. So if they have an Achilles issue, we need to retrain in that more dynamic stretch so that when they take a running step, they don't tear the muscle again or the Achilles again. When it's been still for a long time, we want to create, like we do with the jump board, right? We want to create that rebound and elasticity again. We need to train that. So this is a nice way to start that really gently, maybe as a precursor to jumping or actual big lunging or any sort of lunging jump that they might do. So that, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a sticky pad to use on that arc. Do you think that that takes away from the proprioception and whatnot to use the sticky pad instead of like putting your feet right directly on the arc?
You know, that I think you could probably still feel everything through the sticky pad. And maybe it makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm a monkey toe. I have monkey toes myself. So I just hook my toes in and go for it. So I feel like I can actually grip with the toes, but I think even with the sticky pad, you could feel through and work through. Yeah, I don't think you'd lose much, and maybe people would feel a little more confident. Because usually I should demonstrate it the way I usually give them poles to hold on to, or my shoulder, and I just stand here so they can have a shoulder to hold on to the first couple times so they get going on it.
Good.
Yeah. So those are really the ones that I wanted to show you on the arc. And like I said, for the big barrel, I don't do much for foot and ankle on there, except for like working ballet bar or working some TheraBand exercises on that end of the ladder barrel.
I tried lying on the floor and putting my legs up straight and putting the band on and then doing the point flex. I felt like I was doing mini hops on the reformer. Boy, that was really a workout.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that is a workout. You're right. That's great. Yeah, I mean, there's so much more. I try to give you things that I feel like would be super useful and get you going and give you some good results right away, some things to think about, but definitely there's more than what I've shown you that you can come up with and do. And I think if you think about I like to think a lot about what is it they need to get back to doing. Obviously, my plan or the plan for somebody who's 70 and wants to play golf is going to be different than my plan for somebody who's 18 and is going to college to play racquetball. So, I mean, I've seen both those clients, both for Achilles. So it looks different on different people because they have different needs or they have different requirements and levels that they're getting back to. But I'm hoping that, kind of by giving you this sort of roundabout description, what to look for, that you can really think about, I try and tell people all the time, I could do the same set of exercises for 5 different people working on 5 different parts of their body with the same exercises, because my focus would be different, right? If I'm doing jumping, I mean, that's a quick, easy example. I could focus that on feet or I could focus that on abs. Right? And it becomes a different exercise, really, because my focus, granted, I want them to have good form in all their body, but my focus and their focus is different. So we're concentrating on abs. If we're concentrating on abs, we're concentrating on foot. If we're concentrating on foot. And then I always get the question too about, there's so many things to focus on in any one exercise. How do I correct for everything? Because we all tend to be on the perfectionist side. We want to see movement. We want to see beautiful, perfect movement all the time. But I think what I usually try and say is, especially if somebody has an injury, if their body is safe, if the rest of their body is safe, they're not going to hurt themselves, even if it's not beautiful and perfect. I still need to concentrate on the part that they're here for. Right. So if they're here because they need to get their foot and ankle working better, and they overuse their shoulders some and they're a little hunched over and their head's not exactly right, I try and just set that up or find exercises where I can set that area up in a safe position. So I don't have to think about it and cue it all the time. Because if I had to correct everything, then we wouldn't be able to really focus as much on what we need to focus on. And hopefully I retain that client long enough that we can go, okay, now your foot's doing a little better. Let's talk about what you're actually needing to do in your upper body. And we work our way there, but you also don't want to be correcting so much that you stifle any motion from happening. And it's sometimes a really hard call, a really hard judgment call. So, but I think if you keep them safe or put them in a place where they're supported in the other parts of their body, then you can really focus on your goal or your target body area, and then over time progress to the others. So just think about that, and then maybe in the next week or so, as we're going through the case studies, you can come up with questions that you see happening in your studio, or play with some of these ideas in your studio, or think about it and let's see if you, or try them on yourselves and see if you have more questions about, well, how do I, or what do I do if I see this and I want this, see how it goes. Maybe try out some of these and try out some on your own. I think thinking creatively is great. And if you think, a lot of the exercises I come up with are because I'm thinking towards the function of that person, like especially those lunges with the bar, like on the springboard with the bar here at the hips where I was having them lunge forward. That was because of this 18-year-old racquetball player. And we were doing extreme lunges that way with springs attached around his waist so that he could get back to his low. He did a lot of really low lunging into those moves because it's such a small court and they move so fast and they have to get so low to the ground, that we started training like this with it in small motions and then bigger and bigger with the resistance to get him strong to be able to push off. So sometimes you'll be able to create an exercise with your Pilates equipment that directly helps them with the sport or the exercise they're trying to get back to.
So I just have a general kind of question, which
Yeah.
all have posed to us at one time or another. If you have somebody come in, or this, I've seen this frequently, where someone years ago had some injury to their ankle. Doesn't have any screws in it or plates or anything, but that the foot is flared relative to the knee. So like, how much are you going to try to bring that person into parallel? I mean, is that always going to be the appropriate thing? It doesn't really seem to be, but how do you kind of find that place?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And it's such a hard question because it's going to be really individual. But in physical therapy, we say that 0 to 15 degrees of turnout, so no turnout to 15 degrees of turnout, is all normal range. So if you consider that, and then that allows us a little room for play. Yeah, to still think, okay, this is anatomically okay. And so maybe I don't need to mess with it, or maybe it's their natural stance and I can be okay with that being close enough to parallel. But what I do look a lot at is how their knee aligns with their foot, right? If I take the foot and put it parallel and the knee is angling inward, that's actually not good. That's a disservice, I think, because if they're anatomically inward and their foot goes parallel and I turn out a little bit and the knee opens and goes parallel and it's not a very big turnout, then I think it might be healthier for that knee to have the foot in a little bit of turnout, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's muscular, sometimes it's weakness. And I think trying to evaluate that is important. You can evaluate that by looking at them moving in different positions, seeing if they can actually achieve an alignment in parallel with their knee and foot without their foot everting, for example. Some people, if you put them parallel and you ask them to straighten their knee, the only option they have is to roll to the outside edge of the foot. That's not ideal either. So sometimes people who are a little bit knock-kneed, I'll intentionally turn their feet out slightly to have them feel the inside heel hit the bar, the foot bar, for example, so they can actually get contact there. And then we can work on strengthening the feet and working on that alignment with the knee. So there's a lot of factors. And then there's some people that have, some people have the knock knee, some people have the bow legging, some people have a tibial torsion where actually the tibia is not straight. So there's a torsion in the tibia. And so that really affects where they are on their foot. And so sometimes those people also have to have a tiny bit of turnout that in the foot to have the knees be in a good alignment. So I think playing with it, but being okay with, and some people will probably want to hit me over the head for saying so, but I think being okay with a little bit of that turnout. I'm going to look for knee alignment. I'm going to look for weight distribution over the foot. So if I can get a good contact of weight distribution over the foot and a tiny bit of turnout and good knee alignment, then I'm more likely to go with that little turnout. And sometimes it's only one leg, which is really disturbing for us Pilates instructors and perfectionists of movement to have a little turnout on one foot and not on the other, but sometimes that's actually where the alignment is best.
Yeah.
So sorry,
Okay.
I kind of didn't answer, but try to answer. But
no,
yeah.
but it's all those little factors. So it's good to hear, somebody else talking to.
Yeah. Great. All right, then I think we have 5 minutes. Do you want to go through a quick example case study and then pick up the others, or should we go to the case studies next time? What would be most helpful for you guys?
I think I'd rather wait myself. 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, just take a read through. Let me do this little slide. I have one little slide, and then And then I'll have you for kind of homework, take a look at those case studies. But the question I like to pose to wrap up today is, now, how do I know which is the best exercise for my client? Like that's always the question we have. We have all this repertoire. How do I decide what's going to be best? And so I just put some points down here that might be helpful. One is just to pay attention to the details of the movement and the client's comments. So really listening to what they have to say. Oh, it feels weird in my knee. Oh, this one feels really good. I don't feel like I can get my whole foot down. Those sort of comments. I feel like my ankle's not straight. Sometimes they're wrong. What they feel is not right, but it always draws attention. I always pay attention to those cues so that I know where to look and what they're feeling and really to try and pay attention to. Also make sure, I kind of already said this, but make sure to focus on the area you're trying to improve with each exercise. So give a purpose to every exercise you do. We talked about a little bit in the very beginning about the why. We want to answer the question why. I've got an hour a week, maybe 2 hours a week with these clients. Every exercise I do has to have a purpose, and I have to know what that purpose is. Rather than I'm just going to take them through this series of exercises, I'm going to think about, okay, their goal is this, so I'm going to pick this series of exercise, and every exercise in that I'm going to emphasize to move them toward their goals. Maybe multiple goals or maybe one goal, but I know why I'm picking that exercise for that person. I don't want to waste any minute of that 55 minutes I have, or 50 minutes or whatever it is. I don't want to waste any moment of that. I've got such a little time. I want to decide why with every exercise. Yeah. And sometimes even sharing that with the client, we're doing this one because it really helps them see that you're so focused on their goals, which I think if it was me, I would feel really great about that. Wow, they're so tuned into my goals. This is great, Also pushing the client to their maximum potential without causing increased pain. So sometimes, and I get a little protective coming from the rehab side. Sometimes I feel like I don't push enough. It depends. I want to push them to their maximum, but I'm so afraid of hurting them that I don't push them enough. So I think just finding that fine line, open communication with your client. When they get healthier and healthier, we need to push them along so that they can improve and get to do what they want to do and not feel worried about having to do anything. So we want to push them enough in that strength work and motion. Start exercises usually for somebody who's had an injury. We usually start with range of motion before strength. And then we strengthen through that range of motion, progressively increasing in strength. So we're going to start slow, build our way up, but range of motion is important because if we don't get range of motion back and we start strengthening, sometimes it's harder to get that range of motion back. Now, it's not going to be entirely true 100% of the time. I'm going to take that Achilles example. Again, if somebody actually had an Achilles rupture, they're going to come out of that surgery with a heel wedge in their boot, and they're going to be not allowed to extend the heel down to the floor for some period of time. So that's one of those times where we may actually start strengthening before we start stretching that Achilles in that sense. So pay attention if they're coming out of a surgery or something, definitely pay attention to what the doctor wants and follow that. But in general, we're going to want that range of motion and then strengthen through that range of motion. We're going to work progressively through strength, unloaded to more and more loaded. So sitting down, laying down exercises, and then footwork type exercise, and then we'll get them in standing on the chair, and then we can get them standing and jumping and lunging and doing all those things on the springboard, for example. And initially, I would recommend highly that we keep the repetitions really low. So that's always a great way to avoid hurting somebody, or to check in, is just maybe we do 6 repetitions of everything on footwork the first time around, make sure that's all okay. And then we can add repetitions because that's building endurance for those muscles also that have been not working maybe as well. And that can make the muscles really sore. We want to, strengthening muscles requires some tearing, light tearing of those muscle fibers. So we want to make sure we're not over tearing those muscle fibers as we're trying to build back up. So lightweight, few repetitions, and then build. And then always correct the faulty postures. Be sure exercises are done in good form, especially for that area. The rest of their body, just as long as it's safe, we're good. And then be sure to have a doctor's clearance before progressing to any weight bearing exercises if they're post-operative. So if they've had a surgery, I 100% of the time check with the doctor on the weight bearing status, not the client, the doctor, or have the client write down what the doctor says, or email the doctor, or have them write it down on a prescription, or if they're seeing a physical therapist, also perhaps the physical therapist has that prescription. There's really usually very strict guidelines on when that person can be weight bearing and how much weight bearing. They'll give them percentages like 25%, 50%, 100% weight bearing. So we need to know that before we can even load on the reformer sometimes. So, all right. Thank you guys for being such a captive audience and asking great questions as usual. And then we'll meet next week, go over those case studies, and then we will wrap up this module. Wonderful.